I'm shocked. I really, really am shocked. I did not expect the Senate to so quickly pass the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Absolutely not. I can only imagine if I'm shocked, Donald Trump is stunned. Now he's kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth, right? On the one hand, he's trying to say, I don't care when these files come out. I just want people focusing on the good stuff I'm doing, which there is none, but he means the lies about affordability. But at the same time, he is angry. He is lashing out. Even before the House vote, when he had resigned himself to the fact that it was over, right? Even so, last week, the discharge petition passed, and he at some point blesses it or demands that the whole House vote for it when it was going to hit the floor, which it did. And he does this because he knows he's going to lose, and he wants to look like it was his idea, right? But even as he's trying to lie and say, I'm fine with this, Donald Trump, as you know, called a female reporter piggy. Right? Quiet piggy, he said. Well, guess what? He is now going to be followed around with people shouting, quiet piggy, because of that, because he is the most selfish, greedy, no offense to pigs, person. Now, let's go back to why I'm shocked. Let's go back to what happened yesterday, because it was a huge day that is an earthquake for Donald Trump. Yesterday, November 18th, was the first time that Donald Trump faced the fact that his efforts to control the narrative, to change the subject, to run the clock might, and I say might, be over. And what I'm trying to get at is all but one person, Clay Higgins, from a representative from Louisiana, all but one member of his party. So virtually every single person but this one lone dude voted in the House and the Senate. His entire party voted to release the Jeff Epstein files. And he might try to rewrite history saying now, oh, I always wanted it. But that's a lie. We know that the House of Representatives was shut down, right? The House of Representatives was shut down for, what was it, over 100 days? Like that, it was, the shutdown was 43 days, but the demands but that's just the shutdown. There was also the summer recess, right? We have been, and the survivors have been demanding these Epstein files since July, right? So we know that the House was shut down so that there could not be a vote on this discharge petition, meaning there were enough people in the House on all the Dems and enough Republicans, almost. They just needed one more, right? There were 4 Republicans and all the Democrats in the House who wanted to go over the speaker's head through this method called the discharge position. That's where you go over the speaker's head and said, I want a floor vote on a bill. Keep in mind that the speaker decides what will be on the floor normally. But when he was being stubborn, they wanted to go around his back. Well, in order to get that vote to happen, the so-called go over his head, the discharge petition, they needed 2 things. They needed one more person, and they needed the House to be in session. So they got that one more person. Remember Adelita Grijalva, the representative from Arizona? But he refused to swear her in, and Mike Johnson refused to open the House during the shutdown. We know that was entirely because of Donald Trump. Because when Donald Trump says, do this, Mike Johnson jumps. When Donald Trump says, say this, the ventriloquist dummy that Mike Johnson is says this. And how do we know that? Just look the other day. He told Mike Johnson and all the Republicans, vote for this on the floor, and so they did. So we know that it was Donald Trump who was trying to change the subject, to stop people from talking about the Epstein files. He was blaming the Democrats. He said, I know nothing about this guy, even though he's also saying, I knew he was a creep. It can't be both. How can you know Jeff Epstein was a creep and have been his friend for 15 years before that? There is no question in my mind that Donald Trump is one of the number one suspects who dropped the dime on Epstein. And yes, there were young women or parents of girls at the time who went to the police, but they had been doing that for years. They had been doing that since the 90s. What was different in 2005? The difference is Donald Trump had had a falling out with Jeff Epstein. So undoubtedly, he helped. And we know this because Mike Johnson accidentally said that Donald Trump had cooperated with the investigation. I think that's part of what he doesn't want to get out. But bottom line, why am I so shocked about the Senate, you guys? I'm shocked because historically there's this apocryphal story that, and we don't know if it's a true story, but it's what we say about the Senate. It was Thomas Jefferson, goes back to Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. And they were talking about why did we have not just the House, but we had a second chamber, the Senate. And the concept, according to this story, is that the Senate would operate to cool down the hot tempers of members of the House. And this has to do with, well, the House members at the time, let's keep in mind, the House members of the House were directly voted for. And as you know, now they're every 2 years, right? They're directly voted for. They can be thrown out of office. They represent the passions of the people, was the thinking. And at the time, the senators were not directly voted for. They were chosen by each state. But nevertheless, the idea was the Senate would be would cool them down. And the metaphor that was supposedly used was that of a saucer, that if you had hot tea and you poured it a bit into the saucer, it would cool. I don't know who pours their hot tea into a saucer, but they refer to the Senate as a saucer. Okay, you get the idea. So yesterday, the Senate was not the saucer. When the House sent over after this hot tea, near unanimous vote, except for Clay Higgins, over to the Senate, instead of cooling it down, the Senate turned up the flame and the effing thing boiled over. That is what happened yesterday. So let's just, I want to talk about this in the framework of who we can thank for this. And it is the survivors. And as you know, they have been undaunted. They have worked through their pain. I'm thinking of everyone. Remember, there are at least 1,000 known survivors. And yesterday, because they knew there was going to be the vote in the House, they had a press conference and spoke at the Capitol. And it was so unbelievably touching what they said then, and what they also said afterwards when they were speaking on television about what they had hoped for in the Trump administration. In particular, I want to share with you from Jenna Lisa Jones. She was on with Caitlin Collins yesterday about what she had wanted. So I'm going to share this one survivor. And by the way, I want to tell you guys at 9:30, we have Leah Greenberg coming on from Indivisible. So we're having our news briefing about yesterday, and there was so much shocking yesterday. But let's continue for hearing from the voice of the survivors here. So let me get you this. And here we go.
You said you voted for President Trump, actually, but your plea was to stop making this about him and to essentially start making it about y'all.
Yeah, I mean, he really ran his campaign on this. This is why I voted for him. This release of these files has been so important to me for so long that when he ran with that, I really had some hope that someone was going to do something about it, no matter what the motive was, right, behind it, that he was going to release them and so solidarity with us. But then he completely flipped. And I mean, he was even working with our lawyers and stuff. So it was really hard to go from helping us to completely turning on us and then calling it a Democratic hoax when he knew it wasn't. So he thought it was just a political play, and I think that was wrong, and I think that added fuel to the fire against both parties and where it didn't need to be.
So let me say to you how sad that was. People were tricked by him. He's made all kinds of promises. He promised to lower prices. He promised to end wars. Okay. He is now, as we know, someone has leaked that we have a covert operation planned to be on the ground in Venezuela. Not so covert when your people leak it to the New York Times, but that's kind of beside the point. The victims have not given up. Remember, Virginia Roberts Jeffrey brought down a prince. Andrew, the Andrew formerly known as Prince, has no more titles. And the palace has been covering up for him for years, mostly because his mother, the former queen, could not send him out to pasture. It is huge when anyone can not just speak truth to power, but get a measure of accountability. And that is what is happening now. So let me tell you quickly what actually happened and what will happen next in some of the obstacles in the next steps. As you know, first, in the early afternoon, the House had the vote on the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and it passed. And then my expectation was that the next thing that would happen is Mike Johnson would send it over to the Senate and that John Thune would stall. I thought the Senate was going to introduce some of the amendments that Mike Johnson said he wanted. And so did Mike Johnson. I'm going to show you that clip in a second. Mike Johnson thought that would happen. That's what I thought. And I thought it would take a while. And I thought that maybe they'd get to 60, maybe, but I didn't. And then, there'd be a whole long process. I thought this would drag out until early next year. And I thought that the changes that would be made would undermine what exactly we want here, which is full transparency. I thought in the Senate, there would be amendments that would say, that there would not be disclosure of people who have not yet been accused of crimes, which would just be everybody in there. I didn't know what they were going to do, but I thought the Senate process would grind this to a halt, or at least by Donald Trump and the wealthy and well-connected people who abused children for so many years and who also participated in the rape of young women as well. I thought this would not go anywhere. So I was absolutely not expecting last night when I heard what went down, which is, and obviously this was coordinated with Chuck Schumer, who is the Senate Minority Leader for the Democrats, and John Thune, who is the Senate Majority Leader. Schumer proposed basically a unanimous vote to not to pass the legislation, but to treat this bill as if it had already been passed by the Senate. So this is really big because when they had that vote, the unanimous resolution, it was a voice vote to treat this Epstein Transparency Act as passed. It had not even been transmitted over to the Senate yet. They acted immediately. They acted faster than they even needed to, and in a method that nobody expected. What that means is the actual bill has to be officially transmitted. It may have already been done so from the House to the Senate, and they are just going to walk it over to the White House to be signed. Now, you may say, well, couldn't the president veto it? But he can't. These are veto-proof majorities. That also surprises me, right? So we've got these veto-proof majorities in the House and in the Senate. So here's where what Trump could do, and what I expect him to do. There is language in the bill, right, in the statute, which I can show you. There is language in the actual statute, which will. Here is the summary of it, which is going to be better for. It's going to be better for me to share that with you than the full statute. But I know this is really hard to read, but there it is. I'm being serious. I'm really looking at this. Now I'm going to remove it so you don't have to squint. There is, and I'm going to drop this summation of the legislation right now for you all in the chat so you can see it. This legislation says, I'm going to read you the summary, okay? This law that passed the House and Senate yesterday was introduced on July 15th. August, September, October, November. It took more than 4 months. But once it got passed in the House, it was nearly instantly treated as passed in the Senate. That's why I'm shocked. And let me read to you this summation. And this is a summary provided within the context of, by CRS, which is the Congressional Research Service, nonpartisan organization within the Congress. Okay. So it says, this is the Epstein Files Transparency Act, HR, which means House Resolution 4405. This bill requires the Department of Justice to publish in a searchable and downloadable format all classified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in the Department of Justice's possession that relate to the investigation and prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. This includes 1, materials that relate to Ghislaine Maxwell, 2, flight logs and travel records, and 3, individuals named or referenced, including government officials, in connection with the investigation and prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. DOJ, the Department of Justice, is permitted to withhold certain information, such as the personal information of victims and materials that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. Do you hear that? That's a loophole. Withhold certain information. Now, this is a summary. Additionally, not later than 15 days after the required publication, DOJ must report to Congress, 1, all categories of information released and withheld, 2, a summary of any redactions made, and 3, a list of all government officials and politically exposed individuals named or referenced in the published materials. Okay, what does that mean? What that means, my friends, is that Donald Trump, as you know, recently told Pam Bondi to investigate a certain number of people. Now, she might argue, I'm in the midst of those investigations. The problem with that is, in July, the Department of Justice put out a memo saying this is closed. Now, it was an unsigned memo, but this memo in July about the Epstein case, that she said there's nothing to see here. This is, I think it was an FBI investigation. Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the one about the videos. Here, this is the memo from July 7th, right? It was a memo on July 7th that was put out. I don't need to share that with you. I think it's a little bit of a distraction, but the point of it was she said case closed. They said case closed. So it's going to be very hard in court if they are challenged. Now, of course, this creates delays. Now, also, you may have heard about, well, they have to give this log that I mentioned if they redact things, and they have to describe what they redacted. Well, yes, they have to describe what they redacted, but if they redact, 5,000 pages, they're just going to say generally, they're going to provide generalizations. Now, the good news is they are required to list the people. The good news is no one's going to give up on this as they play games. The bad news is Donald Trump has no interest in this information getting out. Now, we shall see what happens next. I will say that I'm not as cynical as most people are about this. I don't think documents could have been destroyed because I think there are too many people who saw these documents and will know what got destroyed. Remember, there were logs created by people who were reviewing these materials at the FBI. I'm not as cynical, but I still think this process will likely drag out from here. Now, here's what is hopeful to me. This is a sea change. Even though Donald Trump said to the House, go ahead and do this, he absolutely did not expect what the Senate did. And certainly Mike Johnson did not. Mike Johnson, I'm going to show you, Mike Johnson is totally shook by this. As Adam Parkamenko said, I'm going to share with you what Mike Johnson's reaction was. You got to see this. It's unbelievable. Let me open this up and play this for you. This is him. Watch.
Any reaction to Leader Thune seeing the bill without adding amendments or changing it?
I'm deeply disappointed in this outcome. I think I've been at the state dinner. I don't know. I was just told that Chuck Schumer rushed it to the floor and put it out there preemptively. It needed amendments. I just spoke to the president about that. We'll see what happens.
So do you think he may veto it? You say you spoke to the president?
I'm not saying that.
Is he supportive of it in its current form?
We both have concerns about it, so we'll see. I was standing there with the Crown Prince.
Are you frustrated in the majority leader? Are you upset with the majority leader?
Friends, I got to tell you, good for Chuck Schumer. Maybe all that pressure we put on him made him realize he had to step up. Now, let's keep in mind, I'm about to switch this up to the last two topics before we talk to Leah. But let's keep in mind, my friends, what Donald Trump was doing and what Mike Johnson were doing. They were having dinner with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. And you may remember that Mohammed bin Salman, that our own intelligence agency, our own United States, said that he had ordered or facilitated that the murder and dismemberment with a bone saw of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And this was a journalist who worked for the Washington Post, right? You know this story. And so these folks are having dinner. And while they're doing this, over on the Senate, Chuck Schumer and John Thune and the entire, Republican Senate basically said, we're done with you, Donald. This is a huge revolt, no matter what happens next. Now, I want to share with you what it's just utterly vulgar what Trump said when a journalist asked about Khashoggi's murder right there in the White House. I want you to see this. I'm proud of this journalist. We in America, I was disappointed. I'm disappointed that we have to have a relationship, obviously, with Saudi Arabia, but we did not have to do this. He did not have to have the crown prince in the White House. He didn't. And we have, let me just share with you. We didn't have to have that state dinner for him. We didn't have to have the people show up who did. And Donald Trump didn't have to lie for the guy. So let's listen to what he said about this journalist. Here we go. 1 second.
He's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
It's okay, just you ask, Mr. President, if you allow me to answer. I feel painful about,
Concern.
So things happen. So the first thing he says when you said that when a journalist asks about Khashoggi being captured, killed, and dismembered with a bone saw is a lot of people didn't like him. Kind of like he had it coming to him. So while that happens, and then they're at the state dinner, while they're all dining together, is when Schumer and Thune essentially rebelled against Trump. Now, what else happened? Another good thing is that the House Financial Services Oversight Committee is going to ask or subpoenaing the bank records finally, right? This is let me just make this clear. There is no Senate with this. There is no Donald Trump with this. This is just the House sending subpoenas to these banks. Thank God. We need to follow the money. We need to see these bank records. And remember, JP Morgan Chase for years saw these, was concerned, people at the bank. I don't want to say saw these suspicious transactions, but they didn't report them until 2019. This is what we need to see. This is not going away. Now, what I'm going to do is now bring Leah Greenberg from Indivisible up on stage. We've met her here before, and she's going to talk to us about our next steps. Now, even though Chuck Schumer did something good yesterday, doesn't mean he should be the leader of our party in the Senate. No question about that. And we're going to talk about the efforts to move on from this and what we can do not to lose faith and to stay organized against Trump's authoritarianism. I'm also going to ask her about the unbelievable district court ruling yesterday, striking down the new Texas districts. And that is going, by the way, directly to the Supreme Court. This is a procedural thing. You don't need to get into those weeds, but I'm so thrilled. There is no one I would like to speak with more than Leah Greenberg. While we have these victories from yesterday, we should keep that momentum. And here we go. Hey, Leah.
Hi, great to be here.
Thank you for making the time for us again. How do you feel about yesterday?
Well, look, I think yesterday it's a big deal. It is a historic repudiation of this president. It is very obvious that the way that we got to this vote was that Donald Trump understood that he was going to lose a large number of Republicans, so he preemptively reversed himself in order to avoid having that visible break. And also the outcome of that is you have like a level of unanimity in Congress that is historic and unprecedented, and really, I think, demonstrates that some serious cracks have begun to appear in the MAGA coalition. And so now, obviously, the fact that the bill is headed to the president's desk in no way means that they intend to honor the actual legal.
Right, because who is going to sue Pam Bondi? Pam Bondi? I mean,
Exactly right. I mean,
no, but I mean, there might be efforts here, but you and I are a little bit like, it doesn't mean all this information is going to get out right away, right?
Right. I think we're realistic about the fact that an administration that has fought this hard and this long to prevent these files from getting out does not intend to just simply turn around and honor the spirit and letter of the law that they're now being given.
Right.
And also, we should still recognize that this is an enormous victory for constituent pressure, for keeping that pressure on, for spirited organizing in the House to actually use the mechanisms to force this confrontation. And it is an opportunity to continue to push on our side the really clear story that this is about an administration that is massively corrupt. It is covering for enormous and horrifying crimes, and it is doing it all while it soaks regular people and trying to increase its own power. That is the story that we can and should be telling.
And, I always I used to say, in his first term, savor the small victories along the way. But we've done that, and we still have people being violently abused and pulled out of cars, their homes, schools. To me, my biggest concern at the beginning of this administration and is still what is happening with ICE and how, I know we've been talking about, the continuing resolution and the budget and healthcare, but we shouldn't be giving a penny to ICE. We need to abolish ICE. And so this is when I get kind of upset and agitated because on the one hand, I want, again, spotlight and talk about these good things that are happening. But to me, we are in so much danger in this country. And you talked about organizing and helping organize the House that they could use this mechanism to force the vote. What should we be doing right now as we're getting into the holidays and pretty soon we're going to be in an election year? What is Indivisible and the rest of the coalition thinking about doing to keep our momentum?
Yeah. Well, first, let me just say directly to that point around ICE and around the level of repression that we've seen. I think we've got to be real that would-be authoritarian governments are actually often at their most dangerous when they feel like they're losing their hold on power. Right. Ooh. And so we've got to be really attuned to efforts by Trump to flip the script in this moment. Right. I think it's not a coincidence that you are seeing this escalating saber rattling with Venezuela. I think it's not a coincidence that you're seeing new attacks on American deployments into American cities. One of the ways in which an authoritarian responds to something like a major challenge to their authority is by trying to create new conflicts, open up new zones of contestation. And so I think that we should both be very proud of the work that has gotten us here and also be really attuned to possible and new risks that emerge out of their perceived weakness. And, first and foremost amongst those is we should all be real and realistic about the fact that this is not an administration that intends to allow a Democratic House or Senate to take office that could move meaningful accountability, right? Like they've committed too many crimes. They've gone in on too many crazy, corrupt things. They do not want accountability. They will resist it with everything they have. And so we should be expecting that over the course of this year, I mean, we're already seeing it, right? The gerrymandering efforts are, in fact, one of the ways in which you attempt to insulate yourself from accountability. You think you're going to lose an election by a massive amount, so you're trying to rig the rules in advance. We should expect versions of that on an ongoing basis all through next year, and potentially a really open effort to subvert and sabotage the results following the election that they don't like. So that's kind of the way that I would frame the moment that we're in and the context of this weakness around Epstein, possibly provoking further repression and responses. What do? I think we've got to continue to organize. We got to continue to get people into formation locally. It's often at a hyper local level that you're going to have your biggest impact, whether that is protecting your community when you see, when ICE is attempting to detain and deport our neighbors, whether that is organizing for mutual aid and protecting people who are being hurt by the Trump cuts, whether that is organizing your local No Kings protest or your next No Kings protest, right? All of those things are going to be better facilitated if you're in real local relationship on a local level with other people who feel like you do. Also, the holidays are coming up, which is a really important opportunity for us to collectively send a set of messages to some of Trump's biggest corporate enablers, right? We're part of the We Ain't Buying It campaign, which has been launched in partnership with the Target organizers, with Black Voters Matter, with the folks who've been campaigning around Home Depot and its role around ICE deportations. And the basic idea here is that we're asking people to take a step back from these companies during the Black Friday weekend, right? Don't get your Christmas gifts from Target on Black Friday. Do not get your Christmas tree from Home Depot. Do not shop at Amazon on Cyber Monday. Send a message to companies that have been preemptively and anticipatorily obeying Donald Trump that we actually want to see them take a stand. And so
let me just say, wait, so the three, because I love that it's, there are obviously lots of companies that are, union busters or what have you. I love that there's three that we can focus on, right? And so it's Target, Amazon, and Home Depot. Avoid them is what you're saying. And there are options. You can go to Lowe's instead of Home Depot. Instead of Amazon, you could shop at your local mall. And Target, you can always go to Costco, right?
Costco, Walmart. I mean, it's not that we're saying there's like the good list over here and the naughty list over here, right? Like, we're real about the fact that a lot of corporations have in some way enabled the administration or are themselves, are not good corporate citizens on all kinds of fronts. And also, we've got to actually start somewhere, right? Like, we got to have a collective story of what we're doing, which is making sure that people who have consumer facing brands are aware that one of the possible costs of compliance is a major organized consumer action telling you to shape up, right? Right now, and for the first year, what we've seen is a lot of corporations do not perceive there to be any downside risk to going along with Donald Trump.
They don't see Target. I mean, they don't see what happened to Target with,
Well, we want to make sure that that's a more broadly held understanding, right? We want to keep up the heat on Target. We want to make sure that more corporations understand, in the same way that has happened with Disney, right? Like, some kind of, act of complicity, act of compliance can provoke an outsized consumer reaction. And so that's what we're collectively trying to do for Black Friday. And we're going to keep trying to build and flex that muscle as we go as well.
Yeah, that is great. And I know you just mentioned, I'm seeing people in the chat, what's going on the 20th in DC? Do you know anything about that?
Oh, I think there's a protest in DC on the 20th. Yeah, I know that there's a number of folks who are organizing for a protest around the White House. We're not active. We're not actively taking part in that, but obviously, lots of actions around the country on an ongoing basis that we can't be part of all of them.
Now let's talk about. I want to talk about yesterday in terms of two things. What we learned about the so-called covert, I guess is not covert if we learn about it, actions in Venezuela. On this, at the same moment that we have the most famous murderer of a journalist in the White House and being feted by not just the Republican Party, but I also went and looked at who was on the guest list. And of course, Elon Musk, that shouldn't surprise us. But I saw that Mary Barra from General Motors was there. And that's disappointing. I understand why she has to be there because GM and I live in Detroit, they sell cars there, but Donald Trump puts people in those situations. He didn't have to have a state dinner for MBS and create that condition. But the other piece of this is, it's like in the writer's room, they would say, you can't have a guy who hates journalists, have a journalist murderer in the White House, but there it is. And so when you talk about this, these are shows, even though it's, with his fake gilded whatever, and he's, sitting in this sort of civilized setting, when this is a show of force to have a murderer with you. And to say the guy had it coming to him at the same time, you're planning, you're still, these unlawful murders. So are these the kinds of things you're talking about? And what can we do so as not to be scared as they try to use, force and these, chaos across the world? What is it that we can do to undermine his efforts to become more of an authoritarian?
Yeah, well, I think we gotta, first, absolutely agree. Like, there is no way to understand a situation where you have MBS at the White House and Donald Trump saying, functionally defending the murder of a journalist that should not be taken as a threat to free and fair press in America, right? So 100%. And also, I think that a key part of the way that we confront this is we're clear about two things. The first is they want to be authoritarians, right? Like they want to rig elections. They want to suppress freedom of speech. They want to do a lot of very, very dangerous things. They are not going to be able to successfully do that, right? Their coalition is fracturing. His approval is falling rapidly. There are 3 polls this week that have him under 40% and a disapproval over 60%. That is what it looks like when you are simply, collapsing with the broader population. We have had a recent validation of that fact in the across the board wins for Democrats nationally in the November elections. What we are seeing is an administration that is lashing out, not because it is strong, but because it's weak and it understands itself to be getting more weak. And I think that's got to be the core of any collective story, because we do not want to give them power that they do not have. Their whole thing is that they claim they have powers. They threaten. They see if people will actually push back. If people don't push back, then it turns out they do have those powers, right? And that's the
Sure.
model when we see them, go after a law firm. They're doing stuff that's like wildly unconstitutional and extra legal. Some of the law firms accept it, and then they're like, okay, cool, I have the power to do that now, right? And some of them push back, they go to court, they win, and it turns out they don't have the power to do that, right? So it's really fundamentally, it's a game of,
Don't obey in advance. Don't believe in their power in advance. The whole Tim Schneider idea, is that kind of it? Or
exactly. It's all about don't obey in advance. Don't give them powers they don't have. Continue to both point out the harm they're doing, but also point out that they're doing this from a position of weakness, not of strength.
I love this. I know I only have you for 1 more minute, and I'm so grateful for your time. What are your thoughts about, I don't know if you got to see this. I only saw pieces of it, this district court decision in Texas striking down what they thought was a racial gerrymander, and also slamming the lawyers for just, I don't know if it was just typo written, but a really poorly argued and riddled with errors brief. Do you have thoughts on where that gets us in terms of how many seats there are? And I know that you're probably against gerrymandering, but here we are.
We are against
all kinds of, right.
Exactly. Look, we're on the record for banning gerrymandering across the board, or banning gerrymandering across the board. And also, we don't believe in unilateral disarmament in a situation where Republicans are actively trying to rig the rules. And so that's been a complicated balance to carry this year. What I would say in this case, I haven't dug into the actual opinion. My understanding is that there's, we're still operating in a court system that is extremely friendly to Republican arguments on this front, like not only on specific gerrymandering cases, but obviously we're all anticipating an incredibly damaging and frightening decision with the VRA coming out sometime next year that's going to go after
the Voting Rights Act. Yeah,
the Voting Rights Act. Sorry, that's going to potentially take aim at a bunch of Black and brown majority districts in America. So anyways, would you also say, like, I think I start with my expectations in check as it relates to how the court system is interacting with the Republican power grab. And I also think it's one of many simple reflections of the fact that this was always just an unbelievably cynical and, damaging move. And if there's some world in which we end up coming out of these redistricting efforts with more seats, that would be karmically very, very fitting. But I'm not counting on it.
Oh, okay. Well, I am so glad to see you today, and keep doing the excellent work. And thank you for both being really sober and realistic about where we are, but making me feel like I can make a change in the world. So thank you so much, Leah.
Awesome. Thank you. Great to be here.
So guys, right before we end the show, I just want to share with you a bit about what I did see about that the gerrymandering decision, because the other day when I said I've never quite seen anything like this, that was yesterday when I was saying that I think about the James Comey case, where the magistrate judge said, yeah, this looks like prosecutorial misconduct and so on. Well, guys, there is something else that I have really never seen, which is what these judges what these 3 judges in the district court. And remember, there's not usually 3 judges in district court, but this is how challenges to voting districts, how this works, and then it will go right up to the Supreme Court. But I want to find for you, because this is absolutely insane. 1 second. I'm so sorry. This is the Texas gerrymandering. I might not be able to find. I think there's a super. Here, hold on 1 second. Here, I got it. Let me pull this up for you right now. For those of you who like the weeds, this is the case that we are looking at here. And great. And it's, this is, wait, no, this is, I think this is, I might not have this. Is this, the, yeah. This is from yesterday, the 18th. And this is actually, this is the wrong, I'm sorry, I'm giving you the wrong one and giving you the wrong decision for that. But let me just say this. It was an embarrassing, shocking example of the, actually, maybe this was the decision. Oh yeah, it is. So this is this is the decision, right? Jeffrey Brown did write the majority decision. And this was the federal court in Texas that banned this racially gerrymandered map. And what is crazy, what is incredible about this is the very introduction. I think I'm going to bring this back up. Oh, I can't right now. Let me just tell you this. The very introduction to this case, the court quotes Chief Justice John Roberts when he said, "The way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race." Now, of course, that quote was used in a way that was not helpful to that many of us in the decision think was not well decided. But the point is, they're throwing this in the justice's face. So then when it goes up to the U.S. Supreme Court, it'll be very hard for them to hold up this gerrymandered these districts. And if this happens, what's incredible is that would mean for next November's election, Texas would have to go back to their old maps and would not be able to gain these 5 extra seats. And here what the court says is that it was a racial gerrymander, not based on politics, that it was designed to intentionally dilute votes based on race. There's what I find kind of astonishing here, though, is the part of this decision where the court says how rife this was with errors. It is super, I think, super embarrassing for the Justice Department. And I think, I really think that, this is good for Democrats. I think, as Leah Greenberg has said, we don't want districts drawn so members of Congress gets to choose their constituents. We want to vote. We want fair districts. Here we go. This is I can share this with you now. I found this. This is my favorite thing I think I've ever seen. Here we go, guys. Okay, I think you can see this right now. It's challenging to unpack the Department of Justice letter because it contains, this is about a letter, not their filing, a letter, because it contains so many factual, legal, and typographical errors. Indeed, even attorneys employed by the Texas Attorney General who profess to be a political ally of the Trump administration describe the DOJ letter as legally unsound, baseless, erroneous, ham-fisted, and a mess. Can you even imagine? Now, what is this letter? This is a letter from July of 2025. Same day, July 7th, same day Pam Bondi was busy trying to cover up the Epstein files. So there was, let me just read this to you. What spurred Texas to redistrict was a letter that the Department of Justice sent to the governor and the Texas Attorney General on July 7, 2025. The DOJ letter exhorted Texas, which means encouraged them, told them they should redistrict for a very different reason than the political objectives mentioned in the New York Times article. Because the letter is critical to our analysis, we reproduce it in full. And so they did that. And then after that is where the court says it's challenging to unpack it. The court says the gist of the letter, though, is that the Justice Department is urging Texas to change the racial compositions of these 4 congressional districts. Guys, I don't see, if this is true, how they win at the United States Supreme Court. But stay tuned. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Tomorrow morning, unfortunately, I cannot have a show because I have to be traveling because of Thanksgiving, but I will be back here Friday morning. So enjoy your day off. Mods, thank you for your amazing, amazing work, the Mod Squad, and thank you all always for watching.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Taub show where welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Taub show.